Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and welcome to part 2 of how I would write Ryomen Sukuna's backstory. Now I gotta say up first, thank you for all the support on the first video. I wasn't sure how much you guys were going to like it, so I'm really happy that you guys did. So I'm going to try and continue on this project as best as I can, and make sure this part is just as good as the previous part. Also, do be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when the next part does come out, because there's no way I'm finishing this entire backstory in this video, and it would mean a lot for the channel. Anyways, let's get straight into this. Hi, I'm Future Eternal Flame here, and I just need to make a small update to the backstory, which is I am not going to be covering how Sukuna met Urame in this backstory. This is purely because in the chapter extras we figured out how Sukuna met Urame and their entire relationship, so I don't really feel the need to add to it, mainly because the way that Gege did it was basically going to be the way that I did it anyways, so we're just going to keep that the way it is. Anyway, yeah, let's get straight into this backstory now. Though before we do start, I do want to remind you that this is also a series, so if you're confused with some things that are happening in this episodes, especially the fact that I've given Sukuna a name other than Ryomen Sukuna, go check out the previous episode and that'll explain it. But now we're going to get into the story. Naroya just finished getting his fortune told by the fortune teller, as he had two paths he could go down, one where he would find satisfaction, where he would find love, and the other where he would end up meeting his downfall. However, in Naroya's mind, he wasn't too worried about that other path. After all, in one path he was going to get everything he wanted. He was going to get what he had been searching for so long. Why would he not go down that path? Why would he just abandon that? So because he just saw that as absolutely impossible to happen, he decided to just ignore it. He honestly didn't think it was something worth thinking about. So in his mind, he just believed he was destined to get everything that he ever wanted because he considered that other path completely irrelevant to him. It wouldn't be beneficial to him and his desires in any way, shape, or form, and the path he was going to force his destiny to go down was the one of satisfaction for himself. As he left and returned back to the others, his family that had adopted him, 4 other people that were his age, which were his sibling figures, as well as his adopted father figure Marino. And he explained to them what the fortune teller had told him, that he was destined to become a great sorcerer, one of legends. He was destined to become the greatest sorcerer of all time. However, he did keep out the fact that he had 2 paths his life was destined to go down after he achieved that level. Upon hearing his prophecy, a clear amount of excitement entered into Marino's eyes as a wide grin formed on him, while he patted Naroya on the head, ruffling his hair a little bit. He knew it. He knew that he was destined to be great. It was written all over his body, but still, to become the greatest sorcerer, even he couldn't predict that he'd be able to surpass the 3 vengeful spirits of old. Furthermore, his siblings all had a look of amazement in them, to think the man they knew as their brother, despite their weird appearance, was going to become one of the strongest sorcerers of all time. If not the strongest sorcerer of all time. They were so happy for him. Sure, they were going to become legendary, but not at that level, as they looked to their adopted father and decided to ask if they could be allowed to celebrate all their fortunes, but especially Naroya's fortune tonight. However, one of the children could feel something different, that Naroya wasn't telling them the full story, that he wasn't telling them the full fortune. This child in particular had gotten close to Naroya, which was a girl named Aina Chio. She was one of the first ones to actually accept Naroya into their family and had tried to bond with him pretty often. However, they were a very observant child, as several times they had observed Naroya's mannerisms, and she could tell he was hiding some information right now, though that was something to bring up after celebrations. And the celebrations would then begin, a night of celebration for all 5 of them and their fortunes, their destinies, and their lives that they were about to start. During this time, they were starting to meet new people as well, new people that they could call their friends, even some people that they might end up taking on as their mentors as well to get stronger. However, as they were enjoying themselves, most people were actually going to Naroya. After all, Naroya as an entity was rather odd. In terms of appearance, he was the definition of inhuman, having extra arms, a stomach on your mouth, additional eyeballs, but yet they could all see that this would definitely allow them to transcend the normal level of sorcery, considering the fact they could do things that most people couldn't. Most people need to move away from the fight in order to make hand signs and chants, which would prevent them from using their arms as well as their mouth properly. However, Naroya was capable of doing this without any limitations. They weren't going to be hindered by this at all, they could just keep fighting. Furthermore, they also had such a large amount of curse energy as well as such high curse energy potential and talent. Some people wanted to take Naroya directly under their wing and try mentoring them, and some other people just wanted to congratulate them, or some people even wanted to train alongside Naroya, hoping that might end up getting them stronger, which is quite a lot of attention for the 10-year-old's mind, but he was still loving each and every second of this. People actually wanted to come over to him. People actually appreciated him for once, especially with what they heard about their future. However, Naroya was also feeling conflicted about all of this. After all, he could tell that the only reason that these people were actually appreciating them wasn't out of some genuine sense of care, but it was because of Naroya's fortune. Naroya was destined to be great. If it wasn't for the fact that he was destined to be great, none of these people would even care about him. In fact, he'd probably feel like these people would just see him as dirt. Sure, Naroya did enjoy the praise, but it was limited in the effects it could have. However, there was one other thing that Naroya was feeling that he was actually a little bit surprised that he was feeling. There was a small amount of annoyance that was forming in Noroi at the fact that this celebration wasn't completely dedicated to him, that he had to celebrate with his siblings even though they had lesser fortunes. Of course he didn't vocalize this, but still, a small part of him did ultimately feel these feelings. And if he was being honest, he wasn't sure why. He should be feeling happy, he was getting attention, he should be happy for his siblings, which is why he just tried to ignore the feeling for now. In reality, he actually wasn't jealous of either of them getting attention, but jealous of their reactions. He could see they were enjoying it, but he wasn't. Of course he didn't mind it, but they were still actually enjoying it, and it was true enjoyment, unlike his. And once things were starting to calm down, Noroi decided to separate himself from everyone. Where everyone else was going to get some rest, Noroi focused on something he saw, imbuing curse energy into objects, as he picked up a bow and arrow, aiming the arrow on one of the targets before firing the arrow and hitting the target head on. However, as he hit the target, he heard a voice that he immediately recognized, as they said, "You never miss your targets, do you, Noroi?" This being his friends, Aina Chiyo, as she walked in towards Noroi, giving him a soft and gentle smile. And while that smile was intended to give some comfort for Noroi, he could see it pretty well in her. There was quite a bit of concern for Noroi as well. During the celebration, Aina was able to tell there was something off about Noroi. He wasn't feeling the best that he should have been, and there was just something wrong, but she couldn't exactly tell what. However, upon seeing that concern that she had for him, it made a small smile rise on Noroi as he looked over to his friend and adopted sibling, realizing that they couldn't sleep either as they prepared to practice with their own curse technique while they talked. She had a unique one that allowed her to generate electricity similar to that of what came from the storm clouds. Each arrow that she fired was engulfed in that lightning, sending sparks through the target. It was almost like each arrow that she made was a pure lightning bolt. Or at least that was the best comparison that Noroi could think of. Honestly, sometimes a part of him had to wonder if Aina was a Raijin or not. However, after realizing his friend had come in and processing what she said, he replied, explaining that this time he did actually miss the target. That shot was not fully in the target like he wanted it to be. It was a couple millimeters off. This was something that most adults wouldn't have noticed, let alone Aina, but in Noroi's mind, he could notice every single little imperfection that he had. In his mind, everything needed to be perfect. He needed to maximize the skill that he had created. After all, he was destined to become the greatest sorcerer of all time. There was no way the greatest sorcerer of all time would make little mistakes like that while unnoticeable to most would be an imperfection in his eyes. However, Aina told him that he holds himself way too high, and that it was okay to make mistakes, he didn't have to be so hard on himself. After she had taken her shot, Aina handed Noroi back the bow in order for his turn to pass. And while she was handing him back the bow, Noroi saw that gentle smile of hers once more. As even more concern began to echo on her face, she decided now was the time to bring up what she wanted to bring up earlier, as she asked him if he was doing okay. Explaining that it felt like Noroi hadn't given away everything that happened in the fortune teller's vision, that there was something that they were keeping hidden secret. This made a look of surprise rise on Noroi's face. No one actually came to check up on his mood like this after his fortune was told. All they were was celebrating the fact that he was going to have a good fortune in the future. No one really asked what Noroi was feeling after this, and no one really paid that much attention or cared that much other than Aina. And yet, even though he was trying his best to hide it, even though he was really trying his best not to talk about it, Aina was able to notice the signs. It made Noroi feel oddly warm, a feeling that lasted for a second before it faded. As he blinked, he wanted more of that feeling. He needed more of that feeling because it felt good. It felt much better than any of the praise he had been given today. Maybe telling her the truth and why he hadn't been honest would be the way to get more of that feeling, that fleeting feeling of warmness that lasted for only so long, as he decided to take a seat while patting the ground to signal for her to sit down next to him, which she was rather quick to follow. As Noroi then explained the hidden part of what was seen, the fact that he had two destinies, not one. One destiny that would lead to satisfaction, him getting everything he could want, him getting that feeling that he had been searching all of his life for, and another that would lead to his downfall, one that would lead to his own death and destruction. And upon hearing that, Aina honestly wasn't too sure on what to say here, which was rather understandable. They both were still ultimately 10 years old after all, and yet they were being forced to have a discussion about the fate of their lives and what could happen next. Such a discussion anyone would struggle with, let alone people at this age. So while Aina really wanted to help, she honestly had no idea how to help or what to even say to begin helping with this. And it was made even worse with Noroi making her promise to keep this as a secret between the two of them. Normally she would have asked Marino, her father figure, for some advice, but she couldn't really do that with the promise that she had to make now to Noroi. And at first, Aina did honestly hesitate, but she nodded in agreement to keep this as a promise between the two of them. She felt that might be the best way to help Noroi right now, as she then told him that she honestly had no idea what to even say. But she wanted to make sure that she could set him down that path proper, that path they could go down, that path of satisfaction. That was her promise she would make to him. And once Noroi heard that, it made that warm feeling return to him in double fold. Ashina's words were bouncing around in his head. The fact that she accepted his promise and more importantly was going to help him get that good path. This entire discussion made that warm feeling return to him and he loved it. Maybe Ashina was the key to feeling what he had wanted to feel this entire time, though it only felt temporary. That warm feeling, while it remained when they talked, after they were done and went back to their beds, it didn't remain. It faded just as quick as it came. He absolutely needed more of that feeling, but now he finally figured out a way to get it. He just needed to be around Ashina more. He needed to trust Ashina with more things and just bonded with her more, because if he did that, he would end up feeling better. This warm feeling would continue to return. But he was certain of it now, that Ashina was the key to it all, the key to what he had been searching for, and she had been given to him. But this should be easy as well, considering the fact that Ashina and him literally lived together in the same household, which meant they would be able to constantly see each other, and Noroi would be able to get more and more of that feeling. This would lead into 5 more years passing, where during this time they all became quite strong sorcerers. Noroi especially got quite a bit of strength from this time, but also Ashina got quite a lot of power from this time as well. This was due to a multitude of factors. One of the first factors was that Noroi wanted to stay around Ashina more often, which led to the two sparring incredibly often, much more often than Noroi would have any of his other siblings or just anyone here in general. This often ended up resulting in Ashina needing to push herself in order to keep up with Noroi. After all, Noroi was an incredible demon of growth, one with an incredible amount of potential and power. Ashina did not want to be left behind by Noroi, so she wanted to keep getting stronger and stronger to be able to fight alongside him. This ended up pushing her to achieve new heights that she likely wouldn't have achieved for years. After all, when against a perfect fighter like Noroi, you only had the option to evolve or lose, and Ashina was going to refuse to lose. After all, if she lost, if she got left behind, that would mean no one would be around to be able to care for him. Furthermore, Noroi was also sent out on harder missions to deal with stronger cursed spirits. They were in the Heian time period, so strong cursed spirits came a dime a dozen. However, because of Noroi's talent, perfect Jujutsu body, and high cursed energy reserves, he was usually sent out to deal with the stronger ones they found. This also ended up with Ashina going with him on those missions usually and forcing her to evolve because of the strong opponents in front of them. While Noroi did try and protect them from time to time, they weren't always able to, and Ashina pretty often did need to defend themselves and evolve to deal with these strong foes. But through determination, as well as the potential that Ashina was blessed with, she did have the potential to not be left completely behind by Noroi. Now, of course, she was never going to be on par with him. Anytime she reached his level of strength, he had already massively exceeded that level of strength he was at previously, so she knew there was no chance in that, but she wanted to be strong enough to at least be in the same ballpark as him. And with each mission they went on, each time they spent time together, Noroi continued to get that warm feeling that he had felt so long ago. One that he had come to learn was affection. In particular, this feeling came the strongest whenever Ashina went out of their way to care about Noroi. However, while at first this was comforting to him, it slowly was starting to lose taste, or at least this level of it was. The warmth never changed, and he still enjoyed it, but he had gotten used to it now. He wanted something more, and he wasn't too sure how to get it yet. It didn't help also that in getting so connected to Ashina and focusing on her, he got disconnected to everyone in his family other than Marino. It wasn't like his other adopted siblings didn't try either. They did try. They really did try to foster a relationship between themselves and Noroi. But whenever they tried, Noroi never got that same feeling, so he didn't put anywhere near the same amount of effort they did into the relationship. Seeing they weren't going to get the same return and care, well, they decided it wasn't worth it. They just focused on their own. They didn't hate Noroi or anything like that, but they had to wonder why was Ashina so different. It also didn't help that Ashina and Noroi were both in separate leagues from their siblings when it came to power, so they couldn't even bond in missions or combat like how normal sorcerers would. Still, they wanted to catch up. Besides, they also had their own destinies. All 5 of them were destined for greatness. It was just a matter of achieving that greatness for all of them. Noroi and Ashina were both gearing up in order to go on a mission. They were assigned in order to handle an incredibly strong cursed spirit that had been causing quite a bit of trouble for their village. This cursed spirit was a kitsune. By today's standards, it would be considered a special grade cursed spirit. As a result of its power and abilities, they were taking it quite seriously. The both of them in particular were warned to be careful of its flames and whispers. Its flames were known to be rather potent, but it was more the masterful way the kitsune wielded them that made it such a threat. However, it was the whispers that was much more terrifying about this curse. The kitsune was rare even for special grade cursed spirits, considering it was intelligent, one known for the manipulation of people's hearts and minds. It was well known for its skill to be able to turn people against each other, so if they ended up being manipulated, it could end up screwing over the mission completely. Noroi was confident in himself, and more importantly, Ashina, that they could handle this, as Noroi remembered that Marino had told him so long ago, that the strong were the only ones who could bring their will on the world. This was something that Noroi was going to show this cursed spirit, that he was strong, that he was the one who would impose their will on the world. Ashina and Noroi were both preparing preparing their own weapons. Noroi was preparing his bow and arrow, while Ashina was preparing a smaller weapon, made to be a one-handed Vajra. Against an opponent like this, Ashina felt it would be better for her to stay long range rather than going against close range. She wanted to make sure she could avoid the whispers as best as possible, so the best way to do that would just be not getting close at all. And while Noroi did want to go more mid-range for this type of battle, he did want to actually see what this cursed spirit was like, as they were preparing themselves alongside the squad of 18 other sorcerers, preparing to eliminate this cursed spirit once and for all. Little did they all know this would be the site of one of their greatest failures.